creating standard operating procedures and professional development so that all our staff in those two buildings would have continuity and consistency in our curriculum so that our students had the same educational experience. Knowing that we would be eventually closing both of those two schools. So I really took the job knowing I was probably working my way out of a job, but I still took on that challenge. Since 2014, we've continued to have those conversations, but we have had some movement in how we do that to prep for them. Back in 2017, the RSU had a phase 1 performance contract. We focused most of our energy in Oak Hill High School, Carey Bricker, and the middle school. At the time, that was the plan, was those are 3 buildings that we want to see the future. So we want to make sure our energy cost and our envelope kind of projects were updated into those buildings. Since then, we've also done a high school roof project. 65% of that was funded through the state. Then in 2019, we signed a contract for phase 2, and again, it only focused on the 3 main buildings. I dug out some old school board minutes and found in December of 2019 we had a presentation of Siemens, and it outlined those items from those 3 buildings of what ended up being in the phase 2 contract. But what I found was when we called Siemens, I was like, can we find the slideshow? And we found the slideshow, and it outlined all of the items that they were suggesting for Libby Tozier and Sabatis Primary at the time. When we started to look at those items were, again, just envelope items, and at that point, it was about $5 to $7 million. John Varney, our Director of Operations, and myself met with Siemens this morning, and we were looking at just of the items that they were suggesting back in 2019. They're estimating it would be about $10 to $17 million just to do those items. When we looked at the list, there was things that were taken off. So when you start, they say, here's all the work that you need to do, and they started taking the projects out. Ironically, one of those projects was the Libby Tozier boiler. If you haven't been watching our school board meetings, we just in this past month signed a performance contract phase 3 to address our boiler issues at Libby Tozier. So we're actually going to address the Libby Tozier, Carey Bricker, and actually fix some of the Carey Bricker entrance issues. So, and when we looked at that presentation, the interest rate was 1% lower. There was just all these other pieces. So if we were just going to take what that proposal was down in 2019, it would be about $10 to $17 million in those 2 buildings for a phase performance contract. So we focused our 3 buildings, knowing that our mission and our long-term vision was to make sure that our buildings that we have long-term are ready and are in functional and great shape, as you can kind of see as you walked into this building, so that we are ready for a construction phase. So that's kind of where we're at. Okay. So 2019, at that December meeting, the board decided to do the phase 2 contract and made a conscious effort to leave those 2 Sabatis Primary and Libby Tozier out of those contracts. But the plan was for administration to kind of charge ahead and kind of get started on this restructuring. Unfortunately, COVID then hit, funding for architects and other things like that kind of slowed us down. But in the interim, we decided to do something called a reorganization. When we were trying to be responsive to our students' needs and also trying to get us closer to what that vision was of getting students of the same grade level under one roof and our staff of that same grade level under one roof. When we started looking through COVID about what we're learning, we learned that it was about relationships. Our kids were making relationships with our teachers, whether it was on a screen because they were fully remote, or if it was in the hybrid model because they had more one-on-one time with their teachers. But our kids were connected to our people, our staff, because they're awesome, and it wasn't about our buildings. We looked at our percentage of students that were going to be moving. 60% of our students were going to be transitioning to a new building anyway. at the start of this school year, whether it was because they were homeschooled and coming back to RSU, whether it means they were fully remote and coming back to a school building, or they were doing the natural transitions of where our places were. So although we did have a little bit of pushback of like, why now? We got a lot of change with COVID. It was actually a great time because the kids didn't have connections to buildings, they had connections to people. And so we decided to do a reorganization, and we now have Libby Tozier housing all our pre-KK students. Status Primary houses all our grade 1 and 2. Carrie Ricker is our 3 and 4, and the middle school is 5 through 8. The high school has not been changed in structure or anything like that. So why we moved 5th grade? For us, it was about a middle school model and about teaming. So we find that sometimes 6th grade, it was like 7th, 8th grade, did a lot of teaming. 6th grade was left to their own device. When 3rd and 4th grade would do some stuff, it's like 5th grade just didn't know where to fit. We moved 5th grade up here, and we have some great activities that are happening in the 5th and 6th grade teams. We have STEM teams, we have essentials, we have a lot of different programming that's been effective because we've made the 5-6 team and the 7-8 team. And that is our current structure of where we're headed, is to have a middle school model of 5 through 8. So that's kind of where we are at this point in terms of the first phase was reorganization, and now we're heading into restructuring. So the why. So obviously, when we look at like history, when this building was built in
2009?
2007. I forget too.
But it's 7.
Okay. When it was originally designed, it was designed with the intention of having an addition to be added. The idea was Status Primary was going to be closed, and our Status friends were all going to be together under one campus. Similar conversations were happening at Carrie Ricker, that there was options to have an addition at Carrie Ricker, but thinking about Carrie Ricker a little bit different because we have to add sewer or septic or different components at Carrie Ricker. But Libby Tozier friends, because it's so close, could be at Carrie Ricker as well. So in looking at Libby Tozier and Status Primary, these buildings are over 50 years old. The district has done a decent job of maintaining each year in the budget. We are keeping up with the daily maintenance costs that we need to do. Some years we've had tough budgets, and we've cut or deferred some of the basic maintenance costs, especially in those 2 buildings. And now we're at a point of we have to make a conscious decision. Are we going to put the money into these aging buildings, or are we going to add an addition and put the money into a new addition? Some other whys, we talked about same educational experience for all our kids. For us, we want to be able to provide the best education that our district can afford, and we want to make sure that we're making good sense about where we're putting our money. So are we putting it in aging buildings or new buildings? But we also want to think about what are some of the things that we can do in programming to make sure that we're also being futuristic and thinking about how can we save some money in the future. For example, we are looking at adding day treatment classrooms. We currently are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to send some of our RSU4 students out of district to get programming because we can't provide it. And so we're thinking about in this addition to be able to provide some of those educational experiences so they stay in our district, because that's really important. Some other pieces is Child Developing Services, CDS. It's been in and out of legislation, but the idea is Maine's one of the few states that doesn't have CDS being taken care of in the district level. It's done at the state level. And there's a push to get it down to the district level. We need to be prepared that if that comes, that we have the space and the programming available for our birth to 5 students. Obviously, long-term maintenance cost, when you're functioning 3 buildings, is a lot cheaper than doing 5 buildings at the time. And as I said, we have that 10 to 17 million of that work, but that was the work that was mentioned in 2019, not necessarily thinking about we had the boiler, and there's some other things that are creeping up that we'll have to address. We'll have to kind of think about that. And then also we have our regular operating costs, which are about $500,000 to run both of those buildings. Our last why is the design of the middle school. When this building was done, it was for grades 3 through 8, and some of the areas in the building are made for younger learners. Our plan is that this current building will be grades 2, 3, and 4, and then the new addition will be 5 and 8. So looking at our spaces, we're making sure that they're age appropriate, programming appropriate for middle school. So we're really excited, like I said, about the day treatment, some of those maker spaces, and really allowing our kids to have an educational experience for those 21st century skills that we really feel. So we keep asking ourselves, like, our mission is we're inspiring our students for future success. We want to ensure that our buildings are matching those programming. And so that's our why. That's why we're here today. So our process, that's yep, so this is that breakdown that we talked about. It's basic maintenance costs that we talked about, the Tozier and the deferred, all of those pieces, and then, like I said, this is what they originally predicted in 2019, and now they're saying, like, it obviously supplies and everything has doubled since that point. Okay, so I lost the slide somewhere. That's okay. So where we are in the process, the board authorized us to do an RFP to hire an architect firm. We hired CHA, and the process has been seamless. They have been awesome to work with. It's been streamlined, and we're just really happy. And that really just kind of got us through that process to get started to close SDS and Tozier. Sometimes the question comes by of why the middle school. For us, it's our newest building. Again, it was intended to have an addition in mind. Sabattis has been talking about closing Sabattis Primary and bringing our friends over in a campus style. Obviously, access to public utilities is huge. Having public water, public sewer is a big bonus. For us as an administrative team, we really want to keep that middle school structure, so it allows us to, I think parents need to understand, we're going to run it, it's a campus-style building, but we're going to run it as 2 schools. So our 3, 4, second, third, and fourth are going to have different start and end times, different bus runs, different entrances, different administrative areas. So it will be completely separate building, completely separate running school than the 5 through 8 building. And then, so I think that's just really important because I think people get worried that I have a 2nd grader on the same bus as an 8th grader, and that's not our intention here. So just to review, our plan is to close Libby Tozier and Sabattis Primary, and our structure would look like this. So we would have Carrie Ricker with pre-K, K, and 1. And in the future, if we need to add CDS, it would be at Carrie Ricker. And it would approximately hold about 300 students. Oak Hill Middle School will hold grades 2 through 8. So the current building will be 2, 3, 4. The new addition would be 5 through 8. And it would hold approximately 700 students. And lastly, we have Oak Hill High School, which is grades 9 through 12. In all of this, the restructuring, the reorganization, the high school is not touched. They did have work through our phase and performance contracts, but in terms of this structure, there's no change to the current model. And then it's all yours.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much, Kathy. Great recap. So, what I wanted to go through today is sort of existing conditions and then explain to you what the addition is going to look like. And so as you all came in today, you came in through this drive, and I bet a lot of you parked over here. I parked over here because I was running late. But this is the existing school. These are the existing fields. And as part of the original design, it was assumed that some sort of addition could be added kind of in this direction in the future. So what we're looking at now is a couple of things. One, how can we keep the fields the way they are and save some costs there? Put an addition to the existing building here, and then just sort of clean up and separate out some of the site circulation We're looking at expanding the parking, because we're gonna have more staff and potentially more visitors, and then also adding a second entry. So what that does is, best practices, you always wanna try to separate the bus drop-off from the parent drop-off / pickup, right? Because that way you get the buses and the parents who come early are lining up in their own space and not influencing or taking up space for the buses. So there isn't that crisscrossing, right? So what this does is it allows the parents to come in and do pickup or drop off over here, independent of the buses happening here. And then, just like Kathy was indicating, there'll be one entry here for the lower grades, for 2 through 4, and then another entry in the addition that's separate for the upper grades, 5 through 8. Soft play areas for the younger kids, and playground area for the older kids as well. So that's also separate, so they can have appropriate scaled play structures, and then shared PE space, and the softball field would stay as well. So again, this is the existing plan. This would be of the existing building. This would be the entry for the lower grades. Admin areas stay the same, gymnasium stays the same. All of these classrooms get reprogrammed for grades 2 through 4, with the thinking that 2 and 3 are on the first floor, 4 is on the second floor. We would punch through down here at the existing corridor so that we can connect the two buildings. Second floor again, so the library stays the same, and these classrooms become 4th grade with some special education spaces and appropriate support spaces as well. So then the addition, entry here with public spaces, a multi-purpose room, some music and art spaces, its own admin, as Kathy mentioned, its own nurse space, its own social worker and guidance areas, and then the classroom wing that, as she mentioned, it would be more appropriately scaled and more appropriately sized for, or programmed for the 5th through 8th grade classrooms. And that's a 2-story classroom wing as well. So again, and I think this is important because when we design schools, we always want to think about how they can be used by the community more than just through the school day, right? So just like we're using this gym here tonight, we always think about how some of those public spaces, those larger spaces, can be used by the community after hours or on the weekends. So again, we have secure entry here during the school day, but also this space could be utilized after hours and on the weekends as well. And there'd be a cross corridor door here that would allow you to close that off so that the public doesn't have access to the rest of the building during the evening hours and on the weekends. But there's public bathrooms for this use as well. And then what we're talking about right now is there's a warming kitchen there, so they can run simultaneous lunches in the two wings of the building, so that you can have the little kids having their lunch in the existing cafeteria right next door, and then the older kids can have their lunch in the space that's in their addition as well. And then the classrooms are set up so that there's 5th and 6th grade on the first floor with science classrooms for both grades, STEM classrooms, maker spaces, supporting special education spaces, all for that floor for those 5th and 6th graders. And then on the second floor, 7th and 8th graders, again, same thing, science classrooms for each of those grades, supporting special education spaces as well. So, and now Nat's going to take you through kind of what the outside of the building might look like.
Okay, so we started by trying to get familiar and understand this wonderful building that's been taken such good care of here. And we know you really respect and enjoy this facility, and so we wanted to make the addition that respond to not only the site and the use of inside, but also the look of the exterior of the building. Which button is for?
Oh, just the arrow on the right. I'll advance for you.
I'm in charge of the technology in the office. So right here we have as we come into the turnaround, this is the location where the addition would be located. And we come off the end of the classroom wing here, so that's the door that we would connect through to the new addition. And this is a sketch, two sketches to show you. This is the one that's a little looser, just shows the entry form. And what you see we've done is tried to utilize the same sort of proportions and similar materials that we have on the current building, so that the language of the addition is really sympathetic to the current building. So what you see on the left here is the larger entry for the larger kids. And this would be a lot of glass, so you can see in there a lot of visibility from the administrative offices that are in the front there, so you can see out and see what's happening in front, and that secure eye on things. Covered entry to protect from the weather there, and very similar to the other entry that you have. And the green areas is representing a metal panel similar to what's on the building now, and then the red would be a brick facade. And as you come across the building, this is some of the counseling area here. And then up above, you see some windows that would bring light into the hallway below, which is the hallway between the multipurpose room and the corridor where the access to the administration, and the corridor that runs and connects down to the academic building here where the classrooms are. So there's this little connection spot there. There's a little gathering space that connects to the backside. You can see outside from there. And there'll be a nice light coming through that space when you walk between the two buildings. So classroom wings is 2 stories, and this area here shows where the stair would be, and there's windows coming out. Here we're at the end of the corridor, so nice light coming in there, little hangout space for in-between time. And then the classroom wing goes off to the side here. And the next image shows the whole building, the whole side of this classroom wing here with the punched openings showing where the classrooms are going into the classroom wing there. So again, this is similar sort of breakdown of the volume relating to the current design of the building. We think it'll fit nicely into the site and really respond well to the current building, but you feel like it's all part of one harmonious campus.
So what we want to do tonight is we want to hear your questions, your comments, your feedback as part of as part of this process. It's important for us to make sure that we're answering and responding to your questions and your concerns. And as Kathy mentioned, we'll make sure that we get everybody's comments and questions down. And what we're working on is sort of a compilation of frequently asked questions so that we can get those onto the website so that the general public can have answers to the questions that we know are common for this project. But also hopefully we can answer some of your questions this evening as well. Anyone want to start? Anyone brave enough?
What kind of a time frame are you looking at to accomplish this feat?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. So right now, we are looking to have the referendum this summer. And then when it passes referendum, it takes us approximately a year to do contract documents. So we would put it out to bid next spring. And then it'll take about 2 years to build the addition. So we're looking at a 2025 move-in to the building, fall of 2025. And that's typical. That's a typical process. There's not much wiggle room in there, and a lot of it has to do with when we're trying to time it specifically so that we get we want to get into the ground before the frost sets in, because we get a little bit less expense associated with the foundations if we can do it without winter construction.
How much?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We're in the process of we should have our cost estimates in the next week or two. So we're building our budget based on that. Right now, the construction costs are running about $350 a square foot, which is a little high, as you can imagine, from what we experienced maybe last year or the year before. So what we'll do as part of the process leading up to the referendum, we'll make sure that all of the financial information is available publicly, including all of the mill rate impacts for the referendum, so that all of that information will be available to you prior to the referendum. So we're working on cost estimates now. We don't have those yet. We should have those probably. We expect to have the cost estimates next week, and then we'll build a budget based on that with the owner after that.
Is there going to be another meeting?
Yes, we will have a public meeting prior to the referendum as part of the, that's part of the
June
requirement.
22nd.
Yeah, there you go, June 22nd, thank you. Scheduled already.
What happens to Libby Tozer if it's no longer utilized as a school? In Wales, we were blessed with a school we had paid for, and we got to use it and have a nice town complex, for which I'm very thankful. That wasn't planned that way, but it worked out. What happens to Libby Tozer?
That's a great question. My understanding, and Robbie, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, what happens is, the town gets the option to take the building back
Yes.
if they want it. If not, it stays with the RSU, and then we can either sell it or, use it for storage or whatever if we can't sell it. But the town does get the first option on getting the building back.
We have a nice fire department in the
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, they did a good job over there.
no waste.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. So this drawing right here, I can't get that to line up with the overhead projected layout.
Oh, okay.
Because it looks like this building goes back where the other one came out and went
Comes
off the
around.
side.
Yeah. So what happens here is, if this is it's hard for me to point and not plug it at the same time. This is the bus loop here, and this is the admin wing. And then what happens with the classroom wing is it sort of turns a little bit and then extends back towards the back of the property where the pipeline is. So now, if we go to the plan, let's go to the overall plan here. So this is the admin wing, the glass that you see there, this is the entry with the little flip up there. And then this is that two-story classroom wing back here.
Okay.
Here's the stair, and here's that glass part that you
Is
see
this
on the corner.
is this the same layout as
Yes.
when you presented it to the selectmen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's still laid out to where we have the correct lighting direction and everything, so we can keep our energy costs down?
Yes, yes. Also, the other thing that, the site slopes out quite a bit kind of in this direction. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing too many stepped foundations, that gets very expensive as well.
Can you talk a little bit about the intentionality around school safety and the way that this was designed?
Absolutely. Yep, I'd be happy to. So there are a number of key tenets when it comes to school security that are adopted by the American Association of Architects, but also the Maine Department of Education. And some of the key things are that the admin wing has very clear visibility of the approach to the building. So as you have staff in this space, they can see out over the approach to the building from the driveways, from the bus loop and the parent drop-off. So we've got that. The other is having a secure entry. So what that means is the way that the entry is designed, you might have it so that there's either a buzz-in situation on the outside of the building, right? And then these doors are also locked, so you can allow someone into the building. There's a transaction window here. You can have this here at this building as well. So for example, if someone is just coming to drop off Johnny's homework, which isn't really a thing anymore because everything's on Google Docs. Sneakers, we'll go with sneakers. Someone's dropping off Johnny's sneakers. So they can come into the vestibule and drop off the sneakers without coming into the whole building, right? So the big goal is to limit the number of people that are coming into the building, which we've all sort of gotten used to with the pandemic, but we still design the building so that there's sort of a secure access to the building as a whole. The other thing that's really important is limiting the number of doors around the perimeter of the building and making sure that those are secure throughout the course of the day. So we generally only have doors at the perimeter of the building that are required by code for emergency egress. Those doors are locked from the outside. In some cases, they won't even have hardware on the outside, but what they have on the inside are crash bars, panic hardware, just like you see on these doors here, so that you can egress in the case of an emergency fire or whatever. But generally, you can't get into them from the outside because they're locked. What we do as part of, you need to be able to go outside and come back in, right? Whether it's for PE or maybe the art teachers want to take their kids outside and then come back into the building. So what we'll do is we'll work with the school district to identify which of the perimeter doors need to have key card access or some sort of key access for staff, so that you don't have to go all the way around to the front of the building to get back in if you go outside for PE, right? So like this one would make sense to maybe have key card access. Probably this one for the art teachers, right? But very specifically, we want to limit the number of penetrations to the outside. So those are the key things. The other thing, so when we think about how we design for safety in the building, we're also thinking about how we use things like active security versus passive security. So that visibility is a big one, having the sort of sally port to get into the building, the secured entry, that sort of passive, making sure that we have door position switches on the perimeter of the building as well, so that you can tell when one of the doors is propped open, and go make the teacher close it, or make whoever, maintenance staff or whoever close it. But then we also think about where the cameras are going to go in the building, so that we can identify any, because we're thinking about intrusion, but we're also thinking about bad actors in the building and bullying and things like that, right? So we want to make sure that there are cameras that can identify who was where in the building when an incident happens as well.
You could point out we also thought about that in terms of the monitoring the lobby, so that you have the staff who are seated in the entry area, they can have clear visibility into that lobby space, so that it's not a blind spot.
So they can watch that.
Yeah, all part of that sort of active.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too, the design of the new school, two things that come to mind are we're expanding off to the side of the school, so we're keeping a good thought about emergency access vehicle around the school, and having on both sides of the school the ability to get emergency vehicles out back, because with the new design, off a quick look, it looks like you couldn't get back there, but in reality, we're going to have access around both sides. And then two, with the separate new entrance, it allows for, in an event of emergency, whether that's fire, EMS, what have you, they have their own way to get in and take care of things and not disrupt the flow of trying to get students and staff out of the building. So I think that's important to touch on and make sure people know that.
That's great, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Yes?
Jonathan, just one of my questions. In that aerial view, there is going to be fire truck access to the ball field side?
Yes. So right now, you have fire truck access around to here, and we're going to make sure you also have fire truck access around this as well. An emergency vehicle, right? Because sometimes it's fire truck, but then it's also making sure you can get an ambulance back there if there's a medical emergency in the back of the building.
And I had a couple other questions. Talk to us about the cafegimatorium.
Cafegimatorium.
We have in my eye, phys ed should be 4th through 8th grade, and the younger kids, it's not as structured necessarily as needing a gymnasium. And a lot of write a test, but he and I went to school on a tile floor that doubled as the cafeteria, and you could not play basketball because your sneakers were sliding all over the floor. And that happens to be the school that you're trying to close down in Sabatis. So is this going to be for the 4th or 5th through 8th graders, and you're calling it a gym, but it's also cafeteria? So it's not going to be a dedicated gym like this? Because when this school was built, everybody in town insisted on a separate cafeteria from the gymnasium because the food and basketball do not mix. And it's called a multi-purpose room, but where are the older kids actually going to play basketball?
So, go ahead. Bob.
Yeah. The goal is, Jim, is this would be the competition basketball court for 7th and 8th grade basketball. That would be like a practice court or a primary court. And with the new and different types of flooring that we have, it's not like a vinyl flooring. It might be like
Well, ours was asbestos.
right, it might be a softer composite flooring that one we can keep clean from the cafeteria, but we'll also have enough grip so we can practice basketball on it. Rec can use it. And so this would be the primary competition court for like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Because in the initial presentation, I had visions of the older kids going all the way through to this school to get to this gym, and because for
No,
15
they would still have gym there, but they would have competition here, like after school and stuff like that.
And what's the plan, and I will direct this back to you, on the Sabatis school?
To turn it back to the town if they want it, and they can either sell it, or if they choose not to, the same thing. We can hang on to it.
So when they turn it back, it's at 0 cost?
Yep, no cost.
So if the towns keep these buildings, and the school says it needs a new roof, or a new boiler,
Yep.
it still needs that same amount
Yes,
of money.
but the uses are different, like Wales found out. They redid their inside to the things that they needed, but it wasn't being used every day in the same manner, in the same use as a school.
Right.
So that, they've gotten by on that very same boiler there, that we would have, I don't think we could have kept that boiler going the way they have. But the simple fact is that it's not this, it's not the same use.
You're not having 300 kids
Yeah.
every day using water and sewer, so depending on what the town uses it for,
Right.
their upgrades would look and look in
Another
the cost.
topic, I was patient waiting for everybody else to ask questions. So I have another one on traffic flow.
Yes.
The current circle is, sometimes when people are using it, I know it's called a bus circle, but can you explain the traffic flow for the parent drop-off? Because for years, sometimes the drop-off ends up 2 lanes wide because somebody pulls up next to somebody.
Yeah.
Then you have kids crossing through the lane that's closest to the school to get to the sidewalk, and parents giving other parents permission to start driving, and it's kind of a zoo.
It can get messy.
So if you take the drop-off from Sabatis Primary, if there is one, and double it out to the same exact traffic circle, how do you envision traffic flow?
Well, remember, they're gonna be different start and end times, so the 2, 3, 4 will have their own bus drop-off and parent pickup at a different time than 5 through 8, so it's not doubling all at the same time.
But does it improve on the current system?
Yes, because
Because
we
it
have
is
the
out
2
there.
entrance, right? So right now, your parents are funneling also with the buses,
Right.
and this has 2 separate entrance and exits.
So
So the
I
bus
know-
will have their own entrance and exit, and the parents will have their own as well.
No, but I mean, does it make the parent drop-off go down to single lane?
Yes.
Where right now it's in double lane and it's.
Yes,
It could be a nightmare.
but there's a lot more space because there's a lot more parking spaces there, so the loop is much larger than what it currently is.
So where are teachers parking?
So the teachers can park in these parking spaces here. We have 125 parking spaces total. And then in addition to that, there's a single line of perimeter drop-off and pickup spaces that go right up to the sidewalk, with the idea that similar to how the bus loop works, where the buses pull up right next to the sidewalk and kids go from the sidewalk directly to the buses. Similarly, we would do that with the parent loop drop-off as well. So that's in addition to the individual parking spaces.
And there's another entrance on the other side of that house?
Yes, that would be the entrance for staff who are parking, and then also for parents who are dropping off or picking up. So that's separate from the bus loop, which is here, which will that's a big difference, right? Keeping the buses and the parents separate makes a huge difference, just for circulation safety and making sure that you don't have kids darting across parents to get to buses or across buses to get to parents, right?
And my final question
Yeah, great.
involves athletics. So this school, your goal was to build it to not interfere with the ball fields. I believe Lewiston High School got extra money from state or federal because that middle school totally took out all of their ball fields. So they had ball fields built at the same time. Has anything been studied with because I believe the school owns 13 acres on the other side of the pipeline.
Yeah.
Why can't one ball field be built at the same time? Because it could be worded that it is sort of dislocating either the basketball courts or part of the ball field to at least get one more open space ball field of any type of sport on the other side of the pipeline.
Yeah, so we have not looked at that because this is quite a ravine over here.
Yeah, it's pretty deep, Jim.
So it would be quite expensive to level that out so that you could make it a play field and also have an accessible route to get down to it.
The original plan had them turning the baseball field completely 180 with home plate, which would be like by the soccer field. And I asked the question, what was the distance from home plate to the addition? So we wouldn't have to move it. And not moving that field saved us, what, 200,000?
100.
Yeah, about 100,000. By not,
Right, I'm not proposing to move any fields, but if you're gonna get another ball field built and there's
Yeah.
shortage of fields, it should be at the same time as construction is going.
I would love to do it, I just don't think we have the money to do it. I don't think adding that to the cost of the construction is gonna help the project pass.
What are the current little white stripes on the other side of the pipeline?
Oh, these are illegible little text things that
Yeah.
label the hard
Yeah.
top, soft play, and
Yeah.
a multi-purpose field here. They're just labels.
And you're talking, that's pretty wet in there too, because you know what Bucky's Field was like in that back corner. Well, that runs all that whole length alongside the pipeline.
I built the cross-country trail out in there.
Yeah,
And a field is only 1 acre, and there's 13 acres there. So
yeah,
I just pictured there's a Hyde Park between the cross-country trail that I built to put a field out there.
yeah. There might be, and I'm not sure that the project can, I don't think the project can stand the cost of building that field up there at this time. Is it something we could probably do later? Probably, yeah.
What, on a percentage, I know you don't have total, but on a percentage, on funding on the total amount, let's say it was 35 million, what percentages do you get from state and federal?
None,
None?
none.
So, all funding, we're not on the list.
None.
Probably 20 years before we ever got up to the list, and maybe not even then, because it's not like we're living out of temporary facilities. I mean, we have facilities. Our desire is to provide a better educational program for our students, and the 3 new buildings that we have, and reduce the total taxpayers' cost over the long run by closing 2 schools that will cost us huge amounts of money to keep operating besides what we need to do to teach classes in. If the town takes it and turns them into offices, the code requirements and what you need to have an office and put a couple of people in an office is far different than what you need to have a room with 20 kids or 15 kids. So the cost to maintain those two older buildings is just huge, and the cost savings that we will see from them, especially when we offset a lot of the costs to bring them up to standard, really reduces the overall cost of this division tremendously. I mean, you really gotta put all the numbers up and show it. People have to go and look at it and realize that not putting 17 or $10 million into those old buildings, that's $10 million can go towards this to get a new construction, and then $500,000 a year in operating costs between those two buildings that we won't have to have. You know, so over the long run, it really adds up. So it's great that if we build, so this is growing exponentially what I thought it was going to be when we talked about adding on. I thought we would do here exactly what we did at Oak Hill High School, and we would put a wing down with some classrooms in it, you know, and we'd be good to go. When I saw this initially, I was, what do we have here? You know, but I've had some time to digest it, and I can understand the need for basically two schools in one complex. Just because there's a significant difference between grade 2 and grade 8. So we separate them out. The multi-purpose gym area, we have, this is a competition gym here, we have a competition gym in Perry Ricker, we have a competition gym in Oak Hill High School. And I think you're aware that I have supported the athletic programs using our facilities the entire time that I've been on the board. But I would never go and try and build a new education facility with one of the primary intents to be build it extra so that it can be used by the rec program. Build it for what you need for education, and then the rec program can use what facility is available. So that multi-purpose room, maybe it can be used for wrestling.
No, I got my question answered that this
Yeah.
is still gonna be used for
Right.
actual games.
Right, but that's why, the size of that, at one time I thought that was gonna be another competition-sized gymnasium in the other wing. And I just thought that was more than we needed to go and spend
How
to
many
put
square
that
feet?
room in there.
How many hundreds of thousands of square feet is it?
56,000.
Yes, thank you, 56, I should say 56,000.
So there's no outside funding?
No,
So right now, at your 350 number, it's 19,600,000, but I'm not asking you to agree to it.
And that is just for the building itself,
yep,
and it doesn't include the site work
the furniture,
and the furniture and the soft costs associated with, construction testing and things that are required by code. So that's a small number.
our goal, Jim, is to come up with a number, and then look at what the operating cost is of shutting those two buildings down. So when it goes out to bond, that 500,000 that we have from the operating cost goes into a newer building that the operating cost is a lot lower because it's more efficient, energy efficient, lighting efficient, easier to heat, easier to maintain, and we're not going to be putting a roof on it in 2 years. We're not going to be adding boilers to it in 5 years and all that. Is it going to pay for the whole project? No. But our goal is to get the number to a manageable place that we can show that we're putting our money towards something that is going to last for the next 50 years.
That's very well said, Rob. So what is the number when you were introducing it for the next 5 years that would have to be dumped into the two old buildings in the performance?
7 to 10, well now it's 10 to 17 million.
So you're almost paying for it
Right.
in 5 years. years of
Right.
that number.
Right,
And that 10 to 17 doesn't include anything that wasn't identified in
Right.
2019.
Right.
All right, so anything since 2019 till now that needs work or upgrading is not in that number.
So if you look out 5 years, theoretically, you could say that it's almost an even swap of money to bring up a brand new school.
Yes.
In my opinion, that is correct. That's a hard sell, because, you know, people chip away at the budget, and we put so much in for maintenance, and if we don't get the repairs done in the 5 years that it's needed, they just carry on a little bit longer. But the reality of it is sooner or later, as we all know, if we postpone maintenance, at some point, we gotta do it, and it's only gonna cost us more later than it does now, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. So, yes, if you consider what it would cost us to maintain those two buildings for educational purposes over 5 or 10 years versus what it would cost us to go and build this, it is, you know, it's probably less building this than what it would cost us for like 10 years on those buildings.
When you sounded shocked at the 350 number, what was it like 1 or 2 short years ago?
That's a very good question. So, 3 years ago, we had a project come in for bidding at 286
Yeah.
square foot.
when we did this building, Jim, it was 219 a square foot, and then we built this building for $9 million in 2006 and 7.
Well, my fear is that the 350 is still gonna go up if things continue the way they are.
Yeah, and if you postpone this, for sure, it will go up, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was 24 million.
Now, the total cost of this new project, is that gonna be divvied up between all three towns?
Yep. Yeah, it'll go out with the funding, with our funding formula, and the goal is, when we put it up for bond, that means we're gonna borrow the money, build the building, and pay it back over time. So whether it's a 20-year bond, or, like this building was a 20-year bond, or a 25-year, you know, whatever, we're gonna try and make that number as manageable as possible, so it has as little impact as we can get on the yearly budget with the payment. So, and then it gets divided up by the funding formula that we use to fund the schools. And we're in really good shape as far as our debt service goes right now, because I think we only have, 4 years left on this building?
Yes.
So by the time we really start construction and go out for bond, we're probably only gonna have a couple years left to pay this building off. And we've already paid off Kerry Ricker, and that's it. That's all we have for a bond now is, I think, this building. For, you know, that we're paying back. Yeah.
Has any initial indication from both towns been that they want the buildings?
Well, from what I've heard from Sabatis, they would accept the building back. And probably, they don't, as of right now, they don't have a use for it, so they would probably try and sell it. And I don't know about Litchfield. I've heard some stuff about Litchfield, but I'm not sure.
Because way back, if you go before this round of consolidation, there was rumors the superintendent's office would get sold. Do you remember the ball field up there?
Right, yeah.
So if Sabatis or Litchfield didn't take it back, it wouldn't be right to have the superintendent's office move into one of those buildings. And what little you get from selling the superintendent's
Right.
office, and then still have to maintain that building.
Right.
That would happen.
No, that's not gonna
I
happen.
don't think we'd move the superintendent's office into either one of those. There was a discussion at one time about Sabatis Primary School being a day treatment facility and putting some admin offices down there at that time. That conversation I haven't heard brought up again for 2 years maybe.
Our goal, Jim, or my goal, is to get out of those buildings, because they're gonna cost us money. When I was on the facilities committee for this building, our goal was to be out of status primary in 5 years. And that was in 2007, and here we are. And that building needs boilers, that building needs a roof. You know, and all those buildings weren't designed for the air handler capability that new buildings are, and that's the big problem. We have to, it's bringing that technology into these buildings saves money. It makes the learning environment better. It makes it a healthier building for everybody. That's a big thing. And in order to do something like that to those buildings would be astronomical. That number would go from 17 million to 30 million.
Right, that's why they should be dropped.
Yeah.
This consolidation to financially
Right.
self-support itself within 5 years.
Yep.
And
That's our goal.
Assuming her 350 number.
Right. Yeah.
I would hope, so I've got 2 more years on the board, so if I may or may not still be on the board when we get to that point, if, let's say, Litchfield Town doesn't want it, I would expect the school board to put that thing up for sale.
Yeah.
You know, whether they sell it for $1 or $100, get out of it. All right, we want out of it for a reason. There's no reason why we would want to keep it. All right. So, and the towns can do the same thing. They can take it back and then they can sell it for whatever they want. They can convert it. I think part of both of those buildings are used by other organizations.
Yep.
I think that the school pays for heat and electricity or for those residents of the buildings. So, yeah, the school board has been talking about this for lots of years, but over the time we've had different superintendents, and we just never pulled the trigger. Just could never pull the trigger. Finally, it's got to the point where we don't have any choice. We really need to have this new facility so that the kids can get a good education and healthy environment. You know, the pandemic has showed us and everything, we need to exchange air, we need to get the air out, get fresh air in, and it's like next to impossible to do that in a building that was built, we keep saying over 50 years old, I think they're probably older than 50 years.
In 1975, I was in 8th grade, Rob was in 7th.
Yeah.
Was the new edition.
Was a new edition.
Right. He and I took hunter safety in the basement of that building. That's how old it is.
Yeah, so it, you know, they're old by any standards, but for educational purposes, they're just antiquated.
One thing that I hadn't asked and haven't seen it in the plans in terms of like accessibility for students that have limited mobility. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, so, so just like your existing building, it's generally all one level on the lower level. We do step down a little bit because we're trying to follow the grade of the site, but we have a ramp, and that would be an accessible ramp. We meet ADA requirements. All of the bathrooms will meet accessibility requirements. All of the door hardware will meet accessibility requirements. There'll be an elevator right here to get to the second floor, so just like your existing building has an elevator. And then we also make sure that there's accessibility to the fields as well and to the playgrounds. So all of the exterior facilities will also make sure we have accessible paths to those as well.
When you're talking the ramp inside the building, you're not talking like a ramp like as steep it is in high school, right? You're talking like a nice slower grade.
Correct.
Ramp at the high school is.
It's not a race, no race car ramps. It'll be,
Cobblestone.
yeah, very gradual, yeah.
Now, in saying the SBS is far older than 50 years, and Libby Toja looks similar vintage, how old is the high school?
I know that
The high school was built, Jim and I went into the high school the same year, which was September of '76.
Yes.
It was built in 74, 5, but then half of it burned down, and they didn't finish it until late 75, and 76 was the first graduating class.
So that leads to my next question. I mean, my kids they'll have hit high school before this happens, but I am still on board for this. But my question is, when are you gonna look to replace the high school?
So,
Okay, at the high school, we've put a new addition on it. We've put a new roof on it that cost $1 million that we got 68% paid for by the state. We're adding new air handlers to it now. We've put new boilers in it. Our goal is to be in that building for a long time. A long time. We're not looking to get out of the high school within the next 30 years, I would hope.
Sorry, she said when our kids have kids, maybe.
Right, yeah. So our goal, we've put the money into the high school because the high school has good homes. And we found out a lot of things about construction today compared to when that building was built. We put a new roof on the high school. We couldn't just put new roofing on. Because the snow load changes in the roofing, we had to add structural to the roof of the high school in order to put the new roof on. Because during construction, those snow loads have changed and now they had to be reinforced. So we put the new structural in so we can put the new roof on, which all encompass that $1 million for the new roof. And the addition, I think, Bob, 10 years old?
No, it's older than that. I think it was early 2000s.
Yeah, and Oak Hills actually had 2 additions since it was originally built. So our goal is to be in that building for a long time. We're not looking for a new high school.
So the plan is to continue to put money into that school.
Yep.
To keep it up.
Yep.
and that's why the performance contract's focused
Yeah.
mainly on Oak Hill.
And I'd like to say a little bit about the performance contract, because a lot of people don't understand the performance contract. In order to get into the performance contract, our contractor, Siemens, looks at the work that we have to do, and it has to be, in order to get into the contract, it has to be energy efficient, it has to improve energy efficiency, it has to encompass the building envelope, the outside of the building, new windows, new doors, siding, insulation, new boilers, new air handlers. All those things save energy, which consequently pays for the work to be done over a period of time. So when we did phase 1, that took, I think it was, what was it, Kathy, 2.3 million?
1.7.
1.7 million. It was 2.3, then we cut it down. $1.7 million worth of work. It was paid, those improvements were paid for by the efficiencies of the improvements. So it goes out to bond, Siemens carries the bond, and they track our energy payments. So our energy payments freeze and never change. If they go up and we don't meet the energy efficiencies, Siemens cuts us a check. If we save money, it doesn't impact the budget. And not one of those performance contracts, the only thing that impacts the budget is the payment on the bond, that's it. All that work was paid for by those performance contract phase 1. Now we're in phase 2 and phase 3.
Phase 3 will not pay for itself.
Will not pay for itself, all of it, because of the type of work that we have to do.
Right. 1 and 2 did.
So the way this was explained tonight on Libby Tozier,
Yeah.
we do still have to buy a boiler.
Yes. For the simple fact, Jim, is that boiler is gone. It's got a big crack in it, and it did not pass inspection. So in order to use that building in September, it needs a new boiler.
Couple of women ads, who love them.
Well, that's kind of hard to say in February because.
And water, and hot water, boiling hot water.
And hot water. So, yeah,
So does it have to be a boiler that you would, if you were to decide to keep the building for 20 years, you'd put brand X in?
right, but we're not doing that. We're changing just the boilers. We're not changing any of the piping in the building itself. We're not changing any air handlers or anything like that. We're putting in 2 package boilers in a hot water tank, and we're converting it from oil to gas because propane is less volatile and a lot cheaper right now.
And we don't have to take K1
Yeah,
on a long pipe all the way from Perry Ricker down,
yeah.
buried about 6 inches underground and freezing solid all winter to go down.
And that was done when they built Carey Ricker.
What's the difference on the propane boiler versus the oil-fired boiler?
Actually, the price is it's pretty much the same. The only difference is the propane boiler is a high efficiency, condensating boiler, and it's not, like, you're not storing the hot water. It's making heat when it only needs heat, on demand.
I just know you get more heat out of fuel than you.
Well, you get more heat out of fuel, but it's costing you 65% more right now.
Right, if you're looking right now.
Right now.
I'm just
And I don't
saying,
think
you
that's,
gotta look at
I don't think that's gonna change much, and of course, we use so much of it, propane. I know we looked, what was the price, Jonathan?
Right now, like, we got district-wide bulk pricing.
Yeah.
We're looking at, low to mid $2 range.
Yeah, for
Again,
propane.
you're right in that you get a higher BTU content of a
Yeah.
gallon of oil than you do a gallon of propane, but at the bulk pricing we can get for district-wide,
Yeah,
we'll tend to see a much larger over time, cost savings in going with propane. The fuel oil is market-driven, and price is market-driven, propane is largely usage-driven.
yeah, but we can't even we're usually locked in, we put it all out to bid,
Yeah.
and we can't even get them to give us a price right now. Because we usually close our bid out in March,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't even give us a price.
Nope.
Nope. Yeah, because what are we paying right now for fuel oil, Jonathan? $1?
$1.80, $1.90, something.
Yeah, $1.80, $1.90 a gallon.
And I mean, it's gonna skyrocket. I don't know what when they're gonna give us a price. We've asked our current fuel provider right now with the fuel, they won't give it to us. We've asked some other companies, they say, sorry, we can't right now.
Well, come the 1st of July, it'll be a big surprise, the first time you fill up.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I know of other large companies around that have all got locked in prices, so I'm just asking why the school department would.
Well, I know for a fact, we were the largest purchaser for fuel oil at Winthrop Fuel, and they would not give us a price.
You can't go outside of it.
Oh, we have, we've tried. We've tried. Yeah.
Question, I hit the side conversation on boilers, but back to this design, so I feel like we're actually concentrating on that.
Yeah.
I thought that this school was designed for an extension to go straight out towards home plate of the
It was.
baseball field.
It was.
So that hallway, that was not any classrooms, that was designed for the extension, which would be the hallway right there. I thought that was originally designed to be the cheapest addition to go straight towards home plate, even if baseball costs $100,000 to move the field.
Yeah, but we were only talking one block of classrooms, Jim, which was 4 on top, 4 on the bottom. So we were only talking 8 classrooms.
But if it's a long school going all the way down to the pipeline through the basketball courts, did you start or in the brainstorming have any designs that went out that way?
So we looked at that, the trick is that, so that would be just coming out this way.
Straight out?
So when we started working with the school district, they already had the ideas about which grade levels would be coming to this school and the thinking behind having them be considered kind of two separate schools. So if we were to do that and go straight out this way, we have a lot of crossover with the different age groups of kids. And it's not quite enough space for us to get, another, we have to kind of loop the bus around a little bit if we try to put an entry back here. So in trying to keep some of the things that already work and providing a second entry and also having that, security, the visibility out to the approach to the building and all of those things, it made more sense for us to try to wrap around this way than to come back this way. Just in terms of how we were going to actually arrange the building for security and having that idea of two separate schools. The other thing is that when this was built, all back here is fill, which is great for the field. It's perfect for the field. But we probably, if we were going to put a building back here, we would want to dig all that up and recompact it for the weight of a building. Right now, it's perfect for fields. We can leave it just the way it is. But if we wanted to put foundations in there and put the weight of a building on it, we need to dig it all out and recompact it, which can be very expensive, given the size of the building that we were looking at. The way Robbie described it is absolutely, if you were just going to do a little 4-classroom block right here, perfect, no problem. There's no fill right here, we could get that to work. But given the scale and the size of this particular addition, it made sense to kind of pull it around.
And we've already done all the floor testing, Jim, for the new building. And I think we've hit mostly sand and clay. So,
Can you show them the possibility of an addition off of this for future?
Yes, yep, so right now, we've done a similar thing where this, you can just barely see it, but this is the pipeline here. And we've squeezed this in so that we can put another addition on the end of this building if we want to do. Very similar to how the other one was thought of, a 4-classroom block. So,
Except your emergency vehicle running.
yeah, we can fit it all in. We've looked at how we can get that all to work. So we can add another 4-classroom block here to add to the capacity of this building, and then also stretch that emergency access around. So one of the things that we look at as part of the process, and the school district has already done this, is looked at what the enrollment projections are, looking 10+ years out. And so the project is designed for a student capacity that's forward-looking in terms of the enrollment projections for the future of the school district. But even that, we still look at where we might be able to add on to the building if those projections are off for some reason. If there's something happens and all this, the housing market right now is absolutely ridiculous, right? So it's possible that you could get more student influx.
How many years or months would it take to build? 2 years?
Yes,
We're saying opening fall of 2025.
Yeah.
At Lewiston High School, they built completely off on the side, so the high school functionality wasn't affected. What is the plan for this traffic loop? They're gonna lose either the ball fields or the traffic
Yep.
loop for
So
2 years.
Yeah, so we haven't looked at in depth how the phasing of this will work, but yes, you're right, there is going to be some impact to the bus loop. What we might end up doing is shrinking the bus loop a little bit here so that we can have, a safe construction zone, and then putting the bus loop back into place after we get the building built. Similarly, we'll be able to continue use of this building, and we'll try to maintain as much as possible the existing fields, safe access, construction limits, construction fencing, et cetera, so that you can use as much of the existing site as possible throughout construction. Any other questions?
I have a question. So when this opens, that means Savannah's primary kids will all be here, is that correct?
No.
No.
First grade would be
First-
at Carrie
so-
River. So pre-K, K1 is at Carrie River.
So will that school will that school, Carrie Ricker, be retrofitted, I guess, for those kids at that time? Or will it take more time for that to happen?
It's part of our plan, well, to look at like toilets and things like that, just like on this side. We know, because when we have Camp 44, sometimes the sinks are a little too high, so we'll be looking at that. Just like she's talking about the bus loops, all of those phases, we'll be looking at what do we need to do to improve it as we go through.
Yeah, and one of the things that's nice about state funding is similar to the way that you pay for the roof replacement at the high school. There's a revolving renovation fund through the state that will allow you to do things like that. It's considered priority one, is to get the right size toilets and fixtures and accessibility. Those are all considered priority one. So you can look for state funding for those types of projects. The revolving renovation fund usually opens almost every year, every couple of years, if not every year. So those funds are available through the state, just like you did with the high school, for that kind of thing, for accessibility.
And they haven't opened it during COVID, but they're starting to.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, because there's been so much COVID.
Yeah.
related funding, right?
Kathy, one of the questions
Yes.
that somebody had asked was, in light of health concerns and behavioral issues, if there was going to be a specific isolation room,
Yes.
because a lot of students end up in the office.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great
what that would
question.
be.
So one of the things that we've considered in the design of this building is having another nurse's office, so separate from the existing nurse's office. The existing nurse's office here in this building is quite small, and obviously didn't take into consideration the need for an isolation room or any of that stuff. So what we've planned for in this building is a more sort of typical new school nurse's office. It would include, what we do these days is, the nurse's offices often have like a lie-down area for a kid that has a tummy ache. But what we do in these newer schools and what we plan for here is a lie-down area that can be closed off. So it's not just a curtain. So it can have a dual function as an isolation space. But in addition to that, we also have, you mentioned behavioral concerns. As part of the idea of having spaces in this building that can be used for day treatment and can also be used for other behavioral programs that they do currently in the middle school, we have quiet spaces. So they are small rooms that can be, lighting can be controlled, and there's minimal furniture and soft surfaces, et cetera, so that those can be used for behavioral related quiet spaces.
Mindful of having those who are looking at building those programs.
Yes, that's very necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we also looked at with the middle school staff is how those spaces can be appropriately distributed throughout the building. Some of those special education spaces, it's really important for them to be integrated into the academic rooms, and some of them, it's important for them to be separated. So we've been really thoughtful with the middle school staff and with the special education director to be really, to really think about where all those go and what's important for the different populations that we use those spaces.
Could you put solar on the roof?
So, I'm sorry, say that again?
Can you put solar panels on the roof?
So that, we absolutely can. And what we can do is, we haven't talked about that specifically with the Facilities and Finance Committee, but what we will do is have a conversation with them about what the structural loading for the roof needs to be designed for. Because one thing that is common right now in school districts is they look at doing a power purchase agreement with another company. So the company will actually pay for and install the solar panels, but then the school district is essentially leasing the roof space so that they reap the benefits of the solar power energies that's generated. So that's something that the school district can definitely look into in the future as a power purchase agreement.
Yeah, just look at the overall picture, I mean, that's a lot of real estate.
It's a lot of real estate, that's exactly right. Yep, that's a great point.
to say, so we videoed this, so we'll be posting that on the website. We do have another one, next Thursday, June 2nd, at Carrie Ricker at 6:30. So make sure you spread the word, that people can get, their concerns, shared and answers to the questions they might have. So we appreciate your time, and again, June 22nd, there'll be a public meeting with the numbers, and then August 9th is the referendum.